All right. Have we started letting neighbors in? Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome. We're letting neighbors come into the Zoom and we'll get started momentarily. Welcome. We're glad to have you join us for this edition of the Ward 5 Public Safety Call. We'll get started momentarily as more guests join us. Thank you for joining us. We're going to give it about 60 more seconds before it gets started. Thank you for joining us, and we will get started. We have a lot planned for this month's call. I want to start by thanking you for joining us. I am Councilmember Zachary Parker. I have the privilege of representing Ward 5 on the DC Council. These public safety calls started to provide a platform to answer questions that neighbors had about all of the work going into creating a safer district and a safer Ward 5. It also provides us an opportunity to coordinate across agencies and teams. That is a lot of the work that my team is doing on a daily basis. Through these calls, we are able to invite neighbors into these discussions to learn about what's happening, but also to get answers to your questions. It is also an opportunity for you to shed light on concerns you have or areas where we might need to pay more attention. I'm happy to share that we have been able to target certain areas in Ward 5 and deliver more resources through feedback from these calls. So again, thank you for joining this month's version of the Ward 5 Public Safety Call. I'm excited to share that this month we will hear from MPD Chief Pamela Smith, as well as our Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement Director Quelly Sneed, about the work their respective teams are doing to keep the district safe. We thought it was important to start off this year highlighting the vision that the chief has for expanding on the gains we've made in public safety, as well as introducing you to the newly minted director of the ONE's office and sharing updates around her new vision for violence interruption here in DC. After my brief introduction, we will hear from Assistant Chief Altieri. Before I turn it to him, I want to just highlight the tremendous work that he and his team continue to do. And it is for that reason we are proud to acknowledge him at an upcoming event that I will share a little bit more information about in a second, our Ward 5 Awards program. But I wanted to highlight some updates. So if we can go to the next slide. We have shared, but it's worth noting again that the district has seen historic declines in violent crime. And I acknowledge that we have much more work to do. I'm proud to say Ward 5 saw the steepest declines in violent crime across the district. And I would like to think it's in part because of the hard work of our public safety apparatus, but also the coordination efforts for everyone on this call, and that I know is happening behind the scenes. We will shed more lights about trends that we're seeing across Ward 5 and invite you to ask questions or to share your concerns as we move forward in today's call. As I mentioned, we will be chairing a new committee this year, the Committee on Youth Affairs, which will have oversight of DRS, as well as the Child and Family Services Agency and several other smaller agencies. I like to think of this committee as working in concert with our public safety teams and thinking about juvenile justice and juvenile delinquency. A key focus for me this year will be about how do we rehabilitate our youth within the system, and how do we provide services and supports to prevent as many of our young people from ending up in the system in the first place. I look forward to sharing more about our committee's work. It is worth noting we are in oversight season. And so in the coming weeks, we will be conducting oversight for the respective agencies under the committee's purview, and I will share relevant updates as they happen in the weeks and months ahead. Here's a headline of our oversight schedule. Today we had an oversight hearing for the Office of African Affairs, which is also under the committee. On February 13th, we will have an oversight hearing for the Office on African American Affairs, as well as the Child and Family Services Agency, as well as the Office of the Ombudsman for Children. You can sign up to testify for this hearing on the council's website. On March 6th, we will have an oversight hearing for the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services, or DRS, as well as the Office of Attorney General. We have joint oversight responsibility for the Office of Attorney General, along with the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety. It is worth noting, for those that are unfamiliar, the Attorney General in the district oversees juvenile justice matters. And so that is why we have joint oversight in the Committee of Youth Affairs. I hope to hear from many of our neighbors. As I mentioned, we will have our Ward 5 Awards program on February 11th. For neighbors that have been tracking this, it was rescheduled from the last winter, and we're excited to celebrate how our neighbors go over and beyond in being good neighbors. We will also acknowledge many of our district partners that help us keep our community safe and clean and thriving. And I'm thrilled to share that we will be acknowledging the hard work of Assistant Chief Altieri, who was formerly our 5D commander, who is now an Assistant Chief, for his tremendous work and efforts to improve public safety, not just in Ward 5, but across the district. And I hope you will join us. It will again be on February 11th. We'll meet at Ivy City Smokehouse at 7 o'clock, and it will be a great opportunity to celebrate Assistant Chief Altieri, as well as all of our neighbors that are going to be recognized. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Assistant Chief Altieri, who will also introduce us to our acting 5D commander. There have been some updates in the 5D leadership chain. After Assistant Chief Altieri shares, we will then hear from Chief Smith. And so, Chief Altieri, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Councilmember Parker. Good afternoon, everybody. It's always great to be here at the Ward 5 calls. Wow, I'm really, thank you for the award thing. That's kind of a surprise, but thank you. I will definitely try. I'll definitely be there for that, sir. I do appreciate it. I'm completely grateful. I just want to say thanks for having us here. And yeah, you are correct. Like, part of the reason crime is down so much in Ward 5 and the reason we had so much success last year was really due to partnerships, not only with our government agencies, but really with members of the community. You know, community members were very involved in Ward 5. They let us know what's going on. We've had people welcome us into their businesses, their homes, and let us kind of set up and watch certain things in action so we can make cases. We had people giving really good reports as far as things to the tip line, which is 50411, or the non-emergency, the line you can call in anonymously, the 202-727-9099 number. All that really, really helped us a lot, and can't be more grateful. It's a great place to work. I'm happy I'm still involved. For anyone who's interested, my contact information, including my cell phone and email address, are in the chat. And I've also included two things, and I'll be quick, council member. I just want to touch on one, the DC Camera Rebate Program. Cannot emphasize enough what a great program this is. There's a link to that in there. But the second part is the Camera Connect program. Now, if you are a citizen, or if you are a business owner, and especially if you're a business owner, the Camera Connect program is amazing. And the reason it's so great is if you own a business, you can actually go to our real-time crime center. They can you can make an arrangement with them where they can have access to your exterior cameras if something happens in your neighborhood. So essentially, if a crime goes out in a block and a 911 call comes out, RTCC can activate those cameras if they're allowed to with your permission, and we can track what's going on in real time. And the really great benefit to that is it gives a much faster response. I've seen it work in person where the real-time crime center is able to monitor these cameras, guide officers to where real suspects are, and actually effect an arrest. So instead of coming along on the back end where we're trying to solve a case, still very important. This is just a way to speed up that process. And it's an amazing thing. I really recommend you'll take a look at that and look into it. I'm going to put the numbers in the chat. I see I was asked to do that, but while I'm doing that, I want to introduce you all to Commander Sean Conboy. Commander Rooney, Sean Rooney, you all met on a previous call. He's currently at the FBI Academy, which is a great honor for someone to be able to do that. He's going to be there for a couple more months. It's a great program. It's very competitive. It's amazing Sean was picked for that. He's a great leader. And while he's there doing that, we wanted to make sure we had stability in the district. So Commander Conboy, who's got a lot of experience, we worked together for, gosh, I don't know, over 15 years. He's an amazing person and a great leader and a really good police officer. So if I may, Commander Sean Conboy, you could just jump on.
Thank you, Councilmember Parker and Chief Altieri. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean Conboy. I'll be filling in for Commander Rooney for a couple months, and I'm looking forward to being back in the 5th District. I worked there from 2010 to 2014. And I'm excited to be back on the front end of policing, working with the community and being responsive to your needs as we move forward with, I hope, another extensive and a very dramatic crime reduction, as Councilmember Parker mentioned. We are doing our best, and we can't do it without your support and the feedback about what the issues need to be and whether we're getting to where you want us to be or where we need to improve. So I'm very excited to be here for the time being, and looking forward to getting back on the street and meeting the folks out and about in the community. So thank you for having me.
Thrilled to have you. I think we're bringing up some slides that are going to highlight trends for Ward 5, and then we're going to turn it over to Chief Smith. While we wait for the slides to come up, we will have brief opportunities to ask questions. For the sake of time, I'm going to encourage neighbors to put questions in the chat. My team will compile them. We will lift them up when the time is appropriate, but we want to maximize the time we have with the chief. So if we don't ask your question right when you share it, we will that we get to it. If we cannot get to it during today's call, we will commit to getting a response and including it in our weekly newsletter. Assistant Chief, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
So basically what you're looking at here, those of you that on the call before know, this is a year to date. So year to date is a comparison of January, from January 1st to present compared to the same time last year. The reason we do it that way is it's important to look at a month from the month the past year, because there's certain factors that can impact crime. Is school in? What's the weather like? Are there more holidays? You know, there's different things that are going to affect. So you want to compare the months like that. If you're looking at our stuff right now, violent crime's down 13% currently for the month. We're down 11% in property crime. We've got a decrease in robbery and carjackings, a decrease in motor vehicle thefts, and our homicides are even currently. They would be lower, but we picked up a homicide from the year before. And just so that we all understand, the way that's tracked is if somebody's injured, and it could be several years before, and they pass away, the year they pass away, if it's rolled a homicide by the medical examiner, it comes in on the stats now. So that's why that's the way that is. What we're really concerned with, and what most of the community have talked to us about is concerned with, is again, same as last year, and therefore juvenile crime obviously is a peak. We have people ask questions like, you know, you're locking juveniles up. What are you doing once you get them under arrest? What's happening with that? We are making arrests for juvenile offenders. A lot of times through the juvenile court system, and Councilmember Parker probably talk more about this, they're not generally held often. So that is a problem. We're locking people up. We're actually arresting people that sometimes are actually on monitoring from the court with an ankle monitor, waiting for a trial for another crime. We have that happen on a pretty regular basis, so it's a challenge. Also, of course, an issue for us is the retail thefts, violent crimes. In order to combat that, we've been doing retail theft operations. We started those a couple of years ago with businesses that wish to cooperate with us to do those. We've had a pretty good amount of success. Package theft operations, we're still doing that. So if anyone's interested in participating in the decoy package program, please reach out to me. You can hit me up on my email and I will get you in touch with the proper district. We're also doing enhanced crime suppression team operations. Crime suppression team is the guys who are trained really in interdiction as far as firearms and guns in the districts. So these are folks that have a lot of experience in it. They're very hardworking officers. They really want to go out there and work and build cases. So they're not answering the radio. They're looking into these particular crimes. What we're doing with the lieutenant we have now, we're really working with communities. We're really working with community members, different businesses to work with them on certain problems that they have. Everything from motor vehicle thefts and theft from autos all the way up to gun violence. So far it's been pretty good. We're having a lot of luck with it. We're going to keep it up. And the only positive impacts really are ADWs, which are assaults with dangerous weapons, which could be anything from a firearm to a baseball bat. Those are down, and our thefts are generally down as well, 7% across the board. So we're trending in the right direction. I would like the theft from auto to decrease. I'd like to have no crime. That would be the optimum thing. But I'd like to make sure we're maintaining in the right direction. And I think Commander Conboy and his team are going to keep that up. Now, this is for the entire ward. So, council member, this also includes the portions of the 3rd district and the 4th district. That's all I have for this, sir, unless you have a question.
Thank you. Thank you. And we will ask a couple of questions and then turn to the chief. Could you provide an update on the recent officer-involved shooting that occurred at 320 Florida Avenue Northeast?
Sure.
Assistant Chief.
I'll be happy to speak. I can't really provide an update because let me explain kind of the way they work. And as you know, council member, I used to work for the Force Investigation Team. So part of my job at one time was actually to do OIS, or operational shooting investigations. So the way these happen is once an officer discharges his firearm, if somebody is struck, or in this case, somebody is killed, it's investigated by the U.S. Attorney's Office. It's not to say it's a criminal matter, but we really want to take seriously any use of force that involves any sort of loss of life, obviously. So right now what's happened is the U.S. Attorney and the Internal Affairs Division are going to investigate this case kind of in conjunction. The Internal Affairs Division is going to interview witnesses. They're going to pull video to try to determine the type of shooting it was to make sure it's not a criminal act. It gets presented to the U.S. Attorney's Office. If it's declined for prosecution, if they say, hey, it's not a criminal shooting, it's not a criminal matter, as far as the officer's actions, it comes back to Internal Affairs, and then we look at it on a policy end. Because the department takes very seriously any type of discharge like that. And we just want to make sure, even if the courts rule it non-criminal, was policy adhered to. In this particular case, the only thing I can really comment on, since it's an IAD case and we don't have access to those once it leaves, basically the officers confronted an individual with a firearm inside the building on Florida Avenue. When they tried to take him into custody, he ended up discharging the firearm. He struck one of the officers returned fire, and the suspect was killed. And that's kind of where we are right now. The officers are on the mend. We had 3 officers shot in total. They're doing all right.
And that was a really concerning situation, but I think it's fair to characterize that as a one-off incident involving a very unique circumstance versus a pattern of crime that neighbors should be concerned about in that building or even in that area. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It seemed like it was sort of, it seems like it was like you're saying, a one-off thing. It's not like people necessarily trying to commit another crime that we know of. But while we still have to always be cognizant of our surroundings and everything like that, this was more of a one-off related incident.
Okay. I am being told we have a slight update that the chief is going to join us remotely, but perhaps that she's not ready at this exact moment. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to ask another question, and hopefully we can get the chief on shortly. There has been a trend in Union Market and Brookland and certain other areas where a string of businesses are being burglarized, or there are a string of cars that are being vandalized. What is your team doing, or MPD doing, to address these robbery sprees that occur across Ward 5, assuming they're happening across the district as well?
That's a great question. So with the property, it would actually be burglaries. So the burglaries, as far as the property, about buildings, would be theft from autos. As far as the vehicles, what I talked about earlier in the slide we were discussing with crime suppression, that's part of our operations. We've actually been setting up in areas not that I don't trust anyone on the call, but I don't want to say what areas, but we have been setting up in areas, putting unmarked vehicles out there, setting up observation posts in an attempt to try to apprehend these suspects. And we have had some success citywide as far as arresting some of our burglary folks. If you follow MPD on Nextdoor or Facebook, you'll see generally we post a lot of stuff when we get hits on those. A lot of times with burglaries, it is a pattern. It's a matter of like kind of building your case up, identifying your suspect, and then, being able to make that apprehension. But we are very focused on these things right now, which is why our burglaries are currently trending downward.
I appreciate that. And we have one more question. And then just for process, again, I believe we're waiting the chief to join. So I'm going to ask Director Sneed from ONES to share. And then hopefully by that time, we will have the chief on. And so we're just switching the order. But Assistant Chief, what does a retail operation entail? Neighbors have heard you reference that, but they're not quite clear on what that means.
You guys don't know what that is? No, I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. So yeah, it's a great question. I apologize. I try to keep the cop talk to a minimum, but I guess I'm still guilty of it, as everybody on my purpose just needs to be. What we noticed is there was an uptick year before last, especially in some of our major retailers in 5D. I don't want to say which ones because I don't want to call it businesses, but with people stealing. And the problem with that is this: we need to keep businesses in this city. Right? I mean, we need to have people need to have jobs, people have to have a place to shop. So it's beneficial to everyone that we're ensuring that, places want to stay here. They want to come in, they want to spend money, they want to have a tax base, and it's convenient for all to shop. So what we started doing is we took a page from our old narcotics handbook from back in the day, and we started setting up observation posts inside these businesses. So we look at the crime data based on what's called intelligence-based policing. Where is this happening the most? Is it a business? If it's a business, which particular business? And then we also looked at people who wanted to work with us, because not everybody does want to do this with us. Some people do, some people don't, right? The ones that have agreed to do it with us, what we're doing is we're setting up an officer inside the store, inside usually the security office where the cameras are. They set up in there with the security member. And the reason they want the member there is because, one, they're watching people to steal, but two, they're looking for people who might have been barred from the location already, which in itself, if they violate the barring notice, is an arrestable offense. Once that person comes in, either barred or is stealing something, we have an arrest team on the outside area, a couple blocks out. As they go to leave the location, we come in and make an apprehension if it's for theft, and make an apprehension if it's for the barring notice. We've been very successful. Some of our main leading locations are now not in the top, say, if we rate things 1 through 5, we're not even in the top 5 anymore because it's decreased. And the thing about it, we do it often. We move it around a lot. We don't do it every day because CST is doing other operations. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like the package theft operations and other things like that we do, where we're really trying to change the behavior of the criminal, where they have to kind of worry, man, if I go into CVS or a pharmacy and I'm going to try to steal some stuff, are the police going to come running out of nowhere? And is this Dan going to get locked up? And another thing that's good about it is some of our partners have excellent security. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of some of the places we deal with. Some of the bids here, they're just amazing. And they really track these criminals. So a lot of times when we're making an arrest, say for one theft from maybe a major pharmacy, that person might be on tape stealing 2, 3, 4, 5 other times, and we can also close those cases. So that's kind of how those operations work.
Really appreciate that. We are going to pivot. Assistant Chief, Commander Conboy, thank you for joining. I will invite you to respond directly to the comments in the chat. I believe you should be able to see them. And we will make sure that we lift up those responses for everybody to be informed about your answer there. We're going to call on ONES Director Sneed next. Just a quick update on the agenda. We will have Director Sneed share to about 3:45, and then we should be joined by MPD Chief Pam Smith. As you can imagine, it is a dynamic position and dynamic time of year, and so things need to shift, and we appreciate your flexibility. So with that, Director Sneed, we're going to turn it over to you. I will just share as an outset, I was proud to support the nomination of Director Sneed Because in our meeting, I felt as though she provided a coherent vision for where she wanted to take ones and how we could successfully implement a violence prevention model to complement all of the other efforts that we're doing in the public safety space. The second thing I would just say is I acknowledge that some people are skeptical about violence interruption as a proven method to drive down violence. I think we should be clear-eyed about it and just address it head on. And so, Director Sneed, I think you have your work cut out for you, but I have full confidence that you're going to be able to drive this agency forward, and I'm glad to turn it over to you. And then following Director Sneed sharing, we'll ask a few questions, and then again, turn it over to Chief Smith.
Okay, great. Thank you, Council Member. I hope you can hear me. I know that we're having a little technical difficulties, but we're going to get through this. So I'm gonna wait for the slide deck. But while I'm waiting for the slide deck, I wanted to say this is a great opportunity. I feel like the ones or the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, as we affectionately refer to it as ones, is in a moment where we are able to we're well positioned to educate the community on exactly what we do and what we bring to the community. I know that ones is when you hear ones, you really hear about our violence intervention, but I also want to highlight some of our other programs that aren't necessarily highlighted as much in the public. So again, I am appreciative of the opportunity to come before you this evening. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to stick to the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow residents. I'm going to focus to give you a little brief overview over ones, but specifically kind of highlight the programs as I mentioned: Family Survivor Support, Pathways Program, People of Promise, Violence Intervention, and then we can kind of go into the call to action because ones definitely needs our support of our residents. And next slide, please. So the formal mission of the agency is the mission of ones is to foster community-based strategies that help prevent gun violence and increase public safety. Our strategy is rooted in public health approach to violence prevention, recognizing that reducing crime is not always accomplished through law enforcement alone. But if you just simply walked up to a one's employee, what you would hear is a very simplified version of our mission. And our mission is to basically do this. We wake up with the commitment to reduce gun violence in our city day after day after day. If you went to an operations or our chief operations officer and asked her, what is the mission of ones? It is to reduce gun violence in the city. If you talk to our frontline staff, what is the mission of ones? It is to reduce gun violence in our city. And we do this through different strategies and approaches that I want to share with you today. So as I said, one's operations consists of many different programs. We have, of course, the Violence Intervention Program. We have our Pathways Program. We have our Family and Survivor Support Program, People of Promise. And then, of course, to run this great operation, we need a great operation team that consists of human resource officers, grant managers, grant specialists, procurement specialists, administrative services, human resources, and more. Next slide, please. Violence interruption. What is violence interruption? Next slide, please. It is a data-driven approach to reduce gun violence and community violence in the district by scaling services and targeting them in the following ways. We look at communities, we look at high-risk individuals, and we look at groups. One's contracts community-based organizations to deploy trained, credible violence interrupters. Violence interrupters are responsible for triaging critical incidents, mediating interpersonal and crew disputes, and using credible relationships to influence those individuals that is involved. One thing that I would like to kind of highlight for our longstanding residents or our native residents, we know that the district, there has been historical communities that feud. And in that, our target is to reduce those feuds. And we do that by utilizing street intervention or engaging individuals that are involved in these crews or these beats to reduce their risk of violence. Workers in our violence interruption unit bring invaluable lived experience to the role, with many having firsthand knowledge of street life, understanding what crew affiliation looks like, or have been court involved or involved in the criminal justice system. This background really helps us to foster trust and rapport in our communities, but the nature of the work is so profoundly stressful and traumatic. We know that our street intervention workers really are, in our eyes, as first responders. They are often at homicide scenes. They're often mediating conflicts and attending funerals. And a lot of this is the stuff that no one sees. So I think what builds to our skepticism of does violence intervention work? I would say yes, because a lot of the things that are going on behind the scenes in terms of what we have in the music, a lot of rappers, we have a lot of talent here in the district, and it's trying to get ahead of some of the crew-based information that is kind of being exchanged in lyrics. And we do partner with our community-based organizations who are really on the ground, who are really have their ear on the ground to really disrupt this work. But again, I think a lot of the skepticism comes around the fact that it's behind the scenes. I have actually witnessed in our organizations really talking someone out of committing or doing something that is not ethical or illegal. And again, we're dealing with a lot of high at risk, hard to connect to residents. And it helps with the relatability of having lived experience to be able to, one, show in many instances how this individual has gone through all of these different traumas and has been able to turn their lives around and show that they can be a pillar within their communities. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, it's through a lot. It's through community. It's through dealing with high risk individuals, and it is also targeting or working within disrupting violence within groups. That is our strategy and approach. So once is in a period of I don't want to call it reset, but we're moving forward and we're moving onward. And we have changed how our engagement with the community looks. We have transitioned to a ward-based approach. What does that mean if you're not familiar with violence interruption? What that means is basically we have priority areas across the city that fall within the wards. But constantly when I would engage residents and they would say, hey, this incident of gun violence happened in my community. And then I would go to my little dusty computer and I would just say, okay, let me see where this address falls. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the incident would not fall within my priority area. I want to clarify, in our priority areas, we're going to remain. We're committed to staying, making sure that we have all of the gains and all of the relationships that we have built. We're not leaving our priority areas. But now I have the broader reach where I can ask a violence interrupter to say, hey, I am noticing an uptick in this area. I would like for a violence interrupter familiar with that area to kind of check it out and see what's going on, keep our ears to the ground. I think it was the most disheartening feeling to have to say in the past to a resident that unfortunately, your area or your community doesn't fall within our commitment. And now we are committed to going, and when we see the data shows that we need to move into another area that is not traditionally considered one of our priority areas, we have the flexibility to do so. Another point that I would like to mention is our collaboration with outreach specialists. So one thing that we have really boosted within our organization is that we have, of course, the community-based organization connection, but we also have internal VIs within our agency. We have a team of 9 violence interrupters from all across the city internally that also add support and volume into making sure that we are constantly our ears to the ground and we are listening and hearing and moving and supporting where necessary. Next slide, please. Pathways. I always get excited about pathways. We're actually here at ONES. We have a current cohort of pathways happening as I talk to you today. Our pathways program are comprised of individuals who are, once again, high risk, but they are either perpetrators of gun violence or they have been impacted by gun violence. It is a 9-week program that focuses on behavior health modification, workforce development, and they receive mental wellness and counseling weekly. One thing I will say, the beauty of this program is really you just begin to really see how lives are shifted and shaping into what we want productive citizens to look like. Many of our individuals come from many or all walks of life that come from all across the city. And the beauty of this is just that we have a team of pathways. I cannot even begin to share the level of commitment. These are not necessarily, they come to us, they're humble, but they have had a lot of experience, trust issues, been in maybe 1 or 2 programs with not much success. But here at ONES, I am so grateful that they choose us because we are a volunteer program. And they actually are, I mean, you see when the light bulb goes off and you see their passion and you see that they really want to do. And so we work with them in our 9 weeks, and then they have 3 months of workforce, a workplace experience where they go to work every day and they receive aftercare, aftercare meaning check-ins and a constant of counseling, and to come and ensure that they are being successful and providing support for the workplace that they're also assigned to. So Pathways is a program, it is a beacon of light. It's a program that I don't necessarily have to put a lot of marketing materials in because it's well known in the city and very popular. And again, it is it's a choice. However, when they choose us, we've had so many success stories. I'm really proud of this program, and I'm looking forward to broaden it and build it out more. Next slide. Next slide. Family and survivor support. Next slide, please. So to support residents who have experienced a traumatic loss or hospitalization due to community violence, our FSS program facilitates a multi-agency approach to serve survivors and families in the immediate aftermath of a crisis. This is the not so glamorous side of this work. Our team is a small and very mighty team, and what you will see FSS engaged in receives cases. They are there when there is a homicide and providing support for the family. They are there to support juvenile shootings, stabbings, and assaults, adult shootings, stabbings, and assaults, and also to provide support for the community as a whole. One thing that one of our signature events happens in the month of September. It's called our Night of Remembrance. And this is a night for the families of those that have lost one due to gun violence in the city, where we give and create a safe space for them to share their thoughts, their memories, share how this person is missed. And one thing I always like to remind people, especially when we are on the media and they highlight this special event, this isn't a number. this person had a name, it had a family, they had a community that supports them. And so this is where we begin or not just begin, but recognize and give a safe space for them to share what that in person meant to them and give them a space to mourn and grieve loss and celebrate as well. Next slide. So, as I am the new executive director for the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, one thing that I would love to highlight is the fact that we always are in need of support. And one of the programs that that I am in the process of building out and looking for support is I'm always looking for community businesses to open up their doors to providing a job opportunity for those that have committed to doing this work, have successfully completed our programs, and are in our aftercare. So I would always ask that anybody spread the word. If you know that someone within our Ward 5 community has a business and is willing and opening to supporting the pivot and the change that a lot of our participants are in the midst of, I would also welcome that support. But I also want to say that as we are building and we're getting our name out into the community and educating people about what we do, I want you to help us spread the words about our programs. I want you to participate in our events. Come June is our Gun Violence Prevention Month. We have a signature event where we have a lot of trauma-informed care services, where we talk about mental health support. We have a panel that talks about some of the conditions that contribute to violence in our city. And so we address those there. So I really would love for you to participate in our events. Follow us on social media. As well. And I just will also just say I'm looking forward to, I know that next Monday I am participating, and I want to make sure I have this correctly, ANC 5D03 event or community meeting next week. And so I'm looking forward to meeting the residents there as well. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Director. We will rapid fire go through a few questions, and then we're going to pivot quickly to the chief. One question I saw, are violence interrupters authorized to carry weapons?
Absolutely not. Through our job. Now, remember, they are independent citizens, and if they are sanctioned or authorized through those residential, but for this position within the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, that is a no.
Awesome. There was a question from Tom in the chat who expressed that he's a big believer in violence interruption and restorative justice approaches. I'm going to characterize this question. What efforts are being advanced to cut out bad actors among the violence interruption teams across the city?
So we're increasing the background check just to also, and we have put a lot of the ownership on our organizations through our compliance. I don't know if anybody is familiar, but first I want to say thank you, Tom, for your support. Help us spread the word. This is a great program. I would say that we work very closely with our community-based organizations. One of the things that I feel like when we say a bad actor, it is because the trauma of this work, it's a lot of work. And I think that we are building these pathways for our teams because we want them to have that safe space to report when they are in a space of crisis. And so therefore, that is a part of our approach to this as well.
Yes, and if I could push a little bit, there are some people in all walks of life that are going to break the color outside of the lines. I don't think that's just at ones.
No.
What are the steps for discipline within the agency? If you could just speak at a high level. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think we need to build confidence in the violence interruption program amongst neighbors, many of whom I would argue are a little skeptical.
And for the skeptical, because I think a lot of that is because they come from a lived experience. And so there is always a perception, and I think that's probably the more appropriate word, a perception that there are persons in all walks of life, but 1 foot in possibly hasn't made that real commitment to change, or it's just based off of everyday life. They may have kind of reverted back to old lifestyles. We are very engaging and interacting with our team. We're constantly looking for behaviors. We have our compliance team that's out on the street from a programmatic side to engage with not only the participants, but just to make sure that they are getting the services that they are being delivered, but also engaging with those that from the community-based organization side. So I think in this trajectory of moving forward and onward, there is a more connectivity. In our former model, there was a layer where ones was not directly involved as much. There was a barrier. And so now that barrier, we realized that was not necessarily the best model. We're more engaged and more involved into the process.
Awesome. I'm going to ask a couple more questions and we're going to pivot. One question from Catherine was, I'd like to hear more about the plan for safe passages. That's not directly related to ones, but I can share, Catherine, that in last year's budget, we expanded the safe passage program to the Brooklyn Metro Station, and the mayor advanced a safe passage to the Fort Titan Metro Station. A transition for that program is that it is going to community-based or territory-based versus school-based. And the reason for that is so that we can engage more partners. What we were finding is that anchoring it around a school did not reach all of the businesses and entities that are important to keeping neighbors safe. And I'm glad that we're expanding that program and we're going to do much more. Assistant Chief Altieri, I saw some comments about patterns of crime in Trinidad. I will invite you to respond in the chat. There were also patterns of crime in South Dakota and Fort Lincoln. I will invite you to respond in the chat. Somebody asked, is there an update on when Trader Joe's will move into the Monroe Street development? We are still waiting. We don't have a definite date, but it is happening. And that is important to fill retail space because it helps us drive down crime while also expanding food access. Last question from Director Sneed before we transition to the chief in the chat. Can the ones rep or the director cover the area of Perry Street Prep, the 18th blocks of Otis and Newton Streets Northeast? Students linger in the alleyways and go in the yard of vacant homes on the 1800 block of Newton. I will just let you respond to how might you dispatch support on a one-off basis. While you may not necessarily be able to triage to a specific address, I do know that your team and the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Engagement do have additional resources that you can pivot for urgent matters. Maybe if you could speak to that, and hopefully you could take account of that area so that we can hopefully drive more resources there.
And someone can send me the area that was mentioned. I got the 18th. But one thing I would say that is, when there's an incident of gun violence, we have to look into it to see if it is crew-based or community feuding based, or if it's a one-off. And we do partner. Of course, we have our community-based organizations, but sometimes MPD will provide us with some incident information for us to kind of look into it. One thing I want to speak about our relationship with MPD, which I think is which is critical. I've never this is an experience that I think is positive, where we will have Chief Smith to say, hey, we're noticing this activity and we would like for you all to have an opportunity to see if you can go in and diffuse. She is probably the first chief of police that I've even heard ever take that stance, where it's giving us an opportunity. And again, we are a choice, a decision for a participant to be a part of. But when there are incidents of gun violence, she has said, hey, we're noticing an uptick. We would love for ones to go in and work with the families, work with the communities, and see if there's something that we can do to reduce those incidents. So I appreciate that opportunity.
Thank you, Director, for sharing. There was a question about the contact. If you can drop your contact in the chat, Director, we will also share the slides and the recording after this call in our newsletter for those that may be wondering. With that, we are going to transition to Chief Smith, who I believe is on. I'm looking for confirmation from my tail, and I see the Chief.
Councilman,
we are.
I have like 2 minutes. I am so sorry. I have.
Okay.
I apologize. It's just that we had something that happened prior to at the beginning of when I was supposed to join, and then I have another meeting like within a couple of minutes. And certainly apologize to you.
Okay,
Want to have an
we're gonna
opportunity to
pivot.
come back to this same group at some point. I know Chief Altieri is on, but if there's another opportunity for me to come, I'd be more than happy to come speak to the group. I just have to get to this other meeting that I had that I cannot miss.
Understood. Understood. This is what I'll invite you to do, and we understand that things happen. If you could share with our team that we can include in our newsletter this week, just a brief description of your vision for public safety this year. I think a lot of neighbors are eager to hear that. And then I know you sent over slides. Who should we pivot to go through those slides? Anybody?
I don't know if Chief Altieri can go through the slides because they were kind of crafted for me.
We're
But
going to pivot. Thank you for joining, Chief.
thank you, sir.
We will get that blurb and include it. We will invite you back.
Yes, sir.
And I hope all is well.
Thank you so much for understanding. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Neighbors, I apologize. As I said, this is a very dynamic situation. And so Assistant Chief Altieri, I'm going to pivot it back to you. I know I'm putting you on the spot. You've already shared headlines, and so maybe we can talk through some of the questions that we received, as well as some of the priority areas. And I will just go back through some of the questions that we've already received. One from Nicholas was, I'd like to address the increased frequency of firearm discharge and shooting injuries in 2024 around the Fort Circle Park, bordered by South Dakota, Gallatin, Galloway, and Sargent. This area is technically NPS, or National Park Service property, but remains unlit and without any regular surveillance or patrolling. Many of the community are apprehensive about a return to increased violence with the return of warm weather. If you are able to respond to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it is a concern, obviously, in that area. We don't typically, everybody has jurisdiction, so we don't typically patrol National Park Service territory or set up surveillance there. As far as lighting for them go, you'd have to probably go through the Park Service to express those concerns, but I agree, it is not a well-lit area. We do patrol in that area, however, and we do patrol the borders of the park. Fortunately, we haven't had, it's bad, because anytime a gun's discharged, it's obviously of concern, because anytime a bullet is fired, it has no thought process, you don't know who it's going to hit or what could possibly happen. But fortunately, we've had no major incidents because of it. But yeah, it is an area we are aware of. We do patrol it. We tried to work with some of our federal partners. Some of them have more staffing where we can do it, like Park Police is a great example. Some of them we find to be a little more challenging based on the folks they have available for us to work with.
Awesome. We had another question about Fort Lincoln. I'm going to just try and pepper in some things I think would have naturally come up. We have a new administration in DC. We have now Republican control of Congress. I share this to provide an update that I know the mayor is working in concert with the chairman of the council as the attorney general. I also know Chief Smith is working directly with federal partners in an effort to ensure a smooth partnership between our federal partners and the district. Right now, I've received nothing but optimistic headlines that have come from those conversations. I just met with the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Engagement today, who shared that her team is meeting with the newly appointed U.S. Attorney. What I can share is that the mayor's team and our public safety apparatus is working in concert with our federal partners to ensure that there's open lines of communication, there's shared priorities, and that we can continue to protect the values that we hold dear here in the district. I know that has been an ongoing question, as well as this topic of ICE raids or roundups. I'm not going to put the assistant chief on the spot. I will just say that we will do everything we can to protect our values, and we hold them dear. We have no information of any impending raids. There are steps that individuals can take. My team will share that in our weekly newsletter. But neighbors should feel reassured that there is no impending threat that we are aware of on any front as it relates to our engagement with federal partners. That was received. Assistant Chief Altieri, I'll come back to you. Another question we received was about Trinidad. Speaking of patterns in crime, as a resident of Trinidad, a leak shared, we've seen a rise in crime in the past year, particularly surrounding the businesses sitting between Mount Olivet and Sims Place Northeast. Is the city doing anything to label these businesses nuisance properties? I know it's been a conversation I've had with various folks, but have not heard any updates.
That's a great question. I thought that Commander Simic actually addressed that back with the gentleman. So yes, we've been working with the Office of Attorney General. That is who actually considers a place a nuisance property. And just so you all know, nuisance property, I know sometimes people think it's loud music and stuff. Nuisance property is by the Attorney General's definition of things like firearms, gun violence. We have addressed both market down there as well with them. It's a slow process, unfortunately. I will say this, though, the only violent crime since the beginning of this year that's happened on Mount Olivet, it's been reported, was the 2 robberies at Kovacs Liquor Store. We were actually able to close that along with 3 other robberies of other liquor stores with one of our crime suppression operations. It was the same suspect robbing all of those locations. We had It is a lot in 1 month. It's actually down though from what it was last year. And again, we closed those. And as far as ADWs go, we haven't had any on that street right now. We're going to keep the presence down there though, because we don't want it to kick back off. You know, as you know, that part of Trinidad has had issues in the past, even after we did the large takedown with VCSD that involved Trinidad area and also 21st of Maryland. We still have to always be cognizant. So that's a place we always want to keep a presence. I'm hoping that the Attorney General is gonna be involved. You know, generally, like I said, it just takes a long time with their process, is how they do their investigations. Generally, they send warning letters, they do other stuff that doesn't really involve MPD. It's really us getting involved with them and telling them what's going on. So we are in constant communication with them, but we've not had an update recently.
Thank you for that. I would invite neighbors to share with our office concerns about nuisance properties so that we can follow up on your behalf, but also elevate. I'm also happy to share that I recently met with the development team that is developing at 1237, 1239 Mount Olivet, and construction is expected to begin this year. They will construct townhomes, and so that will also address some of those quote unquote nuisance properties there on Mount Olivet Road, and we will share more information about that. I wanted to come to a comment in the chat, Assistant Chief Altieri. There are many citizens in Ward 5 that are in 4D's PSA, and we have not received a monthly report on crime in our area. The ANC commissioners have requested their presence. This has been the situation for 2 years. This needs to be addressed. Sorry, I'm losing my place as it's pushing down. This needs to be addressed because there are situations that are concerning. We always hear from 5D, but never 4D. This is specific to 5B, the ANC. Assistant Chief Altieri, speak to this matter. Thank you.
No, that's interesting. So you never heard from 4D. So I'll definitely reach out to the commander and let them know. Whoever sent me this, if you want to DM me or shoot me an email with your I don't like asking people for contact information in a public chat. But if you wouldn't mind emailing me separately, someone from 4D gives you.
And we'll connect you. That was for Oliver. That was Clarence at a joke. So Chief Altieri, we'll make sure we connect you with that neighbor. But that is not the first time I've heard that concern. Just to characterize, it's about how do we ensure that there is more robust sharing and communication. There's more and frequent presence from our 4D team for neighbors in the 4th Police District.
So can I ask one question? Is that 5A and 5B? We're talking about both of those?
Oh, I think I just was talking and I was completely muted. That was, yes, it's 5A and 5B.
Outstanding. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me know that.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing Commissioner Lucio, who is the chair of ANC 5E, say we have the same issue with 4D attending us at ANC 5A. I would just share, we have heard that routinely from neighbors that there's a desire for the 4th Police District to be as present as the 5th District. And so I'll leave it at that. And again, my apologies, Chief. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we're just pivoting in the moment.
I'll talk about crime all day. You have to get rid of me. You know that. Come on.
There was a question, does MPD plan on reinstating Terrace Sutton and or Andrew Zabowski? I don't know if you want to speak to that. And I know that's a political.
I have no knowledge of what's gonna happen with that. This is kind of a first, so I really don't have an answer. I do apologize.
I'm muted again. Someone said 2 robberies is a lot for 1 month. I agree. I'm just going through this really quickly. My apologies for those. We're kind of pivoting in a moment. When will members of MPD attend community meetings? The Edgewood Civic has a history of MPD community meetings over the last year. So again, Assistant Chief will follow up, but I will say to neighbors, if there is a request that you're making for MPD to join and you're being met with declines, please share that with us. I have seen Assistant Chief Altieri, our 5D commanders, and our 4D commander be very responsive to requests. What I do know from 4D is that their request was to centralize meeting requests, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of ANC meetings, there's a lot of civic association meetings, and every time an officer is sitting in an hour or 2 hour long meeting, that means they're not on the streets keeping neighbors safe. And the request from 4D was to centralize those efforts. That is in part why we also have this monthly call. So I would invite you neighbors to treat this as an opportunity to engage directly with our 4D partners, but Assistant Chief Altieri will follow up on that. I'm going to take a couple of more questions and pivot. Yeah, go for it.
No, I say, please let me know if you're especially if you're asking for a meeting and nobody's like responding. I definitely want to know that. You know I went to the Edgewood meetings myself, and I'm commander there, but I want to make sure I get to keep going. I'm sure Commander Convo will get that. But if there's a question, if you reach out and people are just telling you, please drop me an email and let me know that.
Yes. I'm going to come to another question in the chat, but I had a friend personally reach out over the weekend, and she encountered an issue that I've heard from Ward 5 neighbors, that she called 911 and she was routed to Maryland. I know you've heard about this, Assistant Chief Altieri. I just want to share, in case other neighbors are experiencing this, please flag when that happens. There is a fix for this. While it's not necessarily on MPD's responsibilities list to address it, it is on the Office of Unified Communication. They simply need to adjust the tower or turn the tower so that the pings are fixed and are being routed correctly. I'm also happy to share that there have been drastic improvements with OUC, or our 911 call center. You may have remembered reports last year where calls were going unanswered or people were on hold for upwards of a minute. I believe that has largely been addressed. Staffing has drastically been improved, and upwards of 95% of calls are being answered within the 15-second window, which is the standard. So if you do encounter a call that is routed to Maryland, you are advised to ask them to route you to DC, and that should happen in a matter of seconds. Also, you can flag it for us so that we can triage with OUC. They could turn the tower and hopefully address those situations. But I wanted to bring that up in case my friend is on, but also I know neighbors experience that frequently. Assistant Chief Altieri, there is a comment. There is an escalating gang war occurring on my block at 2nd and W Northwest, and I like to know what more can be done to actively pursue and apprehend these high-risk offenders. There have been multiple shootings over the last year between groups of armed men. One of the groups hangs out on W Street or on the W Street block and openly sells drugs, even up front in front of MPD patrol cars. They are also carrying concealed pistols, and they shot back at attackers. Here is a 30-second video. There's a video in the chat. So, Commander, what can be done for neighbors that are feeling like there's an escalating violence or gang war happening on their block? And I'm sure this is not unique to 2nd and W Street Northwest, unfortunately.
I mean, crew conflicts, you know, that's always something that's always, because that type of, while it's not targeting community members in the community, and anyone else could fall victim to it. So it's a major concern of ours as well. What I would ask, if you could email me that video, I'd appreciate it. The best thing you all can do is either send us that information, send a text tip, send something in where you can remain anonymous, because a lot of people don't want to give information and have the police show up at their house, especially if they listen where this is going on. But at the same time, it's good to have that data. If, I'm not saying it's inaccurate, but if things are happening, like if there are sales and stuff going on in front of the police, that's something we definitely want to know about, because we need to look into that, because that should not be going on. No one should feel that comfortable. Unfortunately, when we put a scout car in a block and we leave it there, what'll happen is it's like the people that are doing bad stuff, they kind of get comfortable, they wait till we go away, they do what they do, we come back. We kind of know that goes on, and there's ways we try to counter it, but I definitely don't want anything happening where people are actually selling in front of the police. That's a major issue. If you could reach out to me, I'd appreciate it. I'd like to get in touch with you and have you talk to our CST team for the district over there. That would be okay.
Yes,
David,
Com-
that's- Send the
Yes,
video.
Chief.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna just say that we are aware of this because this was brought to our office's attention, and we had this had happened in PSA 306 on January 17th. I had added in the captain as well as Commander Polium, and I'll just add you into that email as well as we raise concerns and we try to, figure out what preventive measures are gonna take place there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
problem.
Thank you, Commander, for actively engaging in the chat. There's a question in our Q&A form, Commissioner Salcedo. Usman, what kind of trainings does staff have throughout the year to learn more about the changes in the cabinet leadership? For the last few months, I have noticed that every time I call the fifth district, folks that answer either do not know who watch commander is, who the captain is, or who will direct me to. It's become a norm to expect this, and I'm worried that citizens in need are not getting the best of correct information. And Assistant, again, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot with some of these questions.
I'm glad, Councilmember, you've heard me say it before, we oversee quite a big group of people. So I actually welcome this, because if I don't know about it, I don't know about it and I can't correct it. I'm very concerned about this, and I'll tell you why. Every shift we have a watch commander, and what that watch commander is, it's a lieutenant or a captain, and they're sort of supervising street operations for that tour, because the commander obviously can't be there 24/7. The issue is every day when they have a shift change, all that information goes onto a board in the station, and it lists who these people are. So I just want to make sure that board is being updated, because it's as simple as that. So they should be able to tell you who the watch commander is by looking at a whiteboard that should say Captain Zachary Parker, for instance, for the evening tour. So Commander Conboy, if you could look into that at the district, just make sure it's being updated, because that's an easy fix, and citizens do need that.
And that from the chair of the unified media, in case you want to follow up. And thank you for that. That brings up another topic, Assistant Chief Altieri. Can you just speak to staffing levels? We've heard a lot about MPD staffing levels. Where are we today?
Well, I mean, we're still down about 500 officers. It depends on how you do the math, and that's citywide. So if you look at that, a district usually has a little around 200 some change. So that's basically like 2 districts full of officers we just don't have. It's rebuilding. I will say the city council, Councilman Parker, yourself, have done a lot to try to encourage hiring by MPD with the signing bonuses. We have a very active recruiting team. They actually went up to New York City because they had a hiring freeze up there to get some recruits up there to come down. It's just, it's a challenge. I mean, what we're trying to do is recruit losses, and it's a very difficult thing to do. I think if you read any books on business, and not that I like business, but I took a couple classes, you want to try to retain the people you have, because you really can't, it's hard to replace what you lose. I will say lately, the last couple of years, we have been getting more classes. It's very heartening to go, and we're seeing classes graduating much more frequently than before. We're seeing them with larger groups of people than before. And a lot of those people are DC natives, and quite a few are actually cadets, where people came in to the program as young folks. They got their school paid for at District of Columbia University. And then they went on into the program and became officers. So it's slowly but surely turning around. It's just going to take, it's going to take time. That's the whole issue.
Absolutely. And when the chief says classes, he's talking about through the cadet program and the training process. We're going to ask a couple of more and then we're going to wrap up. We had another Commissioner Bookham from ANC 5A. What email address should we send concerns and videos to?
Oh, just for right now, you send them to me and then I would get you in touch with the right person. So my address is in there, but I'll put it in again because I have an odd first name. So I just want to make sure you get it spelled right. If you're a Sopranos fan, the last name, Jimmy Altieri, was killed in season 2. He was one of Tony's captains. No relation.
Awesome. We had a question from the chat. What is going to happen with the empty 7-Eleven property located at 20th and Rhode Island Northeast? That's not a question for you, Assistant Chief. We are actively working to figure that out. I will say to neighbors, I have envisioned to reimagine Rhode Island Avenue. I secured funding last year for there to be a study from the Office of Planning along the corridor from about 12th Street through the border, Eastern Avenue. And we will receive recommendations from the Office of Planning this spring, which we will turnkey in the budget for deep investments in along that corridor. I will say, I'm not saying this is what is happening. I would love to see a grocery store. And so that is what I'm in talks with about with DMPED and other partners as we try to revive activity along that corridor, but it's frankly going to take time. As of right now, we have no update on that property. Relatedly, we know that CVS is closing in our Carver Langston area. And I would just share that as part of their national strategy to downsize. And there have been questions and concerns what's going to be used at that site as well. And we will share more updates when we have them. I'm going to ask 2 more questions and then we're going to end. ANC 5E Chair, Commissioner MTS also shared, Chief. Just to add, there was also another shooting on this block this morning. And so that around 2:45 a.m., that is 2nd and V Street Northwest. So that is connected to the gang activity comment from the Bloomingdale resident earlier. I'm going to just ask a more high-level question, Chief. Can you speak to any new initiatives that you are advancing or that the department is advancing in this new year? As we know, we're quickly approaching spring and summer. I know over the last 2 years, you've been really strategic in trying to get ahead of the summer months through various initiatives. Can you speak to what you have planned and or what you've seen really work in the past? After you share, we will wrap up with some quick announcements and close our call.
Sure. So basically, we're really trying to zero in on violent crime. I mean, you know, property crime is important. We're going to keep doing other property crime operations, but we really want to make sure we're focused on violent crime. What we are doing, besides the operations with CST, with the crime suppression teams, we're really working with things like the Violent Crime Suppression Division. We're working with some federal agencies. That's kind of how we got those closures early last year when we were closing down the drug market in the Trinidad operation, specifically for that crew in Maryland Avenue. So we're definitely still focusing on that. We're still working on our package theft operations. We're sort of changing our focus a little bit. We do want to really drill down on motor vehicles. We're getting a lot of theft from autos in 5D, specifically like Ivy City is an area that's getting hit pretty heavy. Union Market. So we're really doing more operations like observation posts and things like that. Another thing we're looking at is other forms of technology that can help. So for instance, with burglaries, you know, we've been talking to businesses about ballistic film and stuff that people can actually use on their windows to prevent them from being broken. Some of them are so strong they can actually withstand bullets, like a 9mm bullet round. And they're much more affordable than, say, safety glass and things like that. It doesn't change its aesthetic to businesses. So we're always looking at stuff like that as well to kind of drive it down. One thing we are doing, I saw a question in there about safe passage. Now, I will say we don't, safe passage is through the mayor's office, and you've heard that as well. But what we are doing, you know, especially in 5D and a couple of schools there, we're really looking at the schools where we had a lot of issues last year, you know, specifically around robberies or specifically around violent crime, especially gun violence. And we're making sure we are present in those spaces and places. Now in 3D, I saw the question for the schools over there. So the officers you see at the beginning and the end of the day, those are school safety officers. There's very few of those left now, but the ones we have deployed to specific schools. So to answer the question, I can't remember who asked it in the chat. yeah, Commander Pulliam is aware of the other areas around there, and he is putting people over in those spots. You might not see them all the time. They might not be visible, because we may be doing some other things in order to make sure we're keeping an eye on stuff. But we do have people out there. Yes, we are aware of that. Really, the concern is schools with the warmer months. You know, kids become victims. I know there's a notion in DC that, you know, juveniles commit the majority of the crime. Juveniles do commit crime, but not all juveniles commit the crime. You know, it's the core group of people that do the bad stuff. So what we want to focus going into the summer months on the schools, where people are coming from, where they're going to, and where the kids are hanging out. We're really trying to look at that. And we're really, really taking a dive into like drivers of gun violence, knowing who in the neighborhood commits the violent crime, so we can kind of keep an eye on those folks in case they are engaged in something where we can actually take action and hopefully get them off the street and make the community safer.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I always think it's helpful to just level set on certain things. So Assistant Chief Altieri now oversees commanders. Help me out, Altieri. Commanders in wards 5.
Yeah, Commander Savoy is 2D, Commander Pulliam is 3D, so 3D touches Ward 5, Commander Ravenhouse is 4D, and then Commander Rooney, who's 5D, but he's right now until he gets back to the FBI Academy in March, Commander Convoy is going to take that space.
So while we look forward to working with Commander Convoy, and I do want to ask Commander Convoy to share your contact so that neighbors can directly reach out to you. It is helpful to understand that Assistant Chief Altieri now kind of has a higher level view of what's happening across wards 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And it's a large swath.
They don't align with the PSAs.
Yes, yes. I also think it's helpful just for contact information. Thank you, Assistant Chief, for sharing your contact. The anonymous tip line is also very helpful. I believe that is 50411. And you can, for neighbors, text that tip line, any information with as detailed a description as possible. If you do not want to share your name and contact information, it directly routes and dispatches to MPD, and they will check it out. And so if you are somewhere you can't make a phone call, again, you can use that anonymous tip line that is 50411 to make that or to reach out anonymously. Last thing I would say, if you are noticing trends on your block or in your community, something that looks off, if you're noticing people coming and going, please flag that for our team. Please overshare with our public safety partners. We have had very successful interruptions based on neighbors oversharing, and it is through your surveillance and vigilance that we can continue to keep our community safe. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to apologize for the in-the-moment pivot, but we're going to offer grace to Chief Smith because I know she's very busy. She did in advance share slides. I'm going to check to make sure it's okay if we can share the slides with neighbors. And again, we will include all of the slides and information for today's call in our Ward 5 newsletter. I'm going to ask Melissa to drop the sign up in the chat if you are not receiving it. It is where we share a wealth of information every week. I also want to remind neighbors to join us on February 11th for the Ward 5 Awards program. That is where we will recognize, among others, Assistant Chief Altieri for his great work in keeping us safe. Again, Ward 5 saw the steepest declines across the city, and we should continue to tout that and work to make it even better. Thank you all for joining, and if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to myself or members of my team.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Councilmember. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.